Sup, freaks? This episode was brought to you by our good friends at CrowdHealth. CrowdHealth is here to help you reimagine how you pay your healthcare costs, how you take care of your healthcare. CrowdHealth is not health insurance. It's actually trying to get more and more people to walk away from the health insurance industry because it's an opaque black box where you throw money in. You don't really know what's going on with it. You don't know how your healthcare costs are being negotiated on your behalf by the health insurance companies. You really don't know if you're being taken care of or not. CrowdHealth is here to fix that. What you do when you join CrowdHealth is you join a community of people who are taking care of themselves and who really want to become sovereign with their healthcare. What you do is you become a member and you pay a monthly fee. That fee goes to a dedicated health account, a bank account that you control, that you have visibility into, that you can always take with you at the end of the day if you decide to move away from CrowdHealth. You pay that monthly subscription fee, and then if you ever have a health event, you bring your healthcare bill to the CrowdHealth team. They go to the doctor, negotiate your health expense down to a lower price because they actually work on your behalf as opposed to the insurance companies. And then you pay the first $500 of your healthcare cost, and then it goes out to the CrowdHealth community, and your bill is crowdsourced. To date, they've had 100% of their healthcare bills paid, and it's a beautiful thing. They're also adding a Bitcoin component where a portion of your monthly subscription fee will get put into Bitcoin, so you have your fiat dollars alongside your Bitcoin account. Again, you have access to both at the end of the day if you ever want to walk away from it. But again, it helps you lower your healthcare costs because they're there to negotiate on your behalf. It's a much more personal experience instead of calling a 1-800 number. When you become a CrowdHealth member, you have a dedicated health advocate who is the same person throughout your time with CrowdHealth, who's going to walk you through everything you need to do and make sure that you're getting the best care that you can get that you can possibly get. Go to joincrowdhealth.com/TFTC. The first 1,000 members of the Bitcoin community are going to get, using the code TFTC, are going to get $99 a month for the first 6 months of their healthcare, of their CrowdHealth cost. So go check this out. Me and my family, we use CrowdHealth. We've decided to opt out of the traditional health insurance industry. Again, it's very opaque. Feel like it doesn't really take care of us. So come join us in the CrowdHealth community. Use the code TFTC.
You've had a dynamic where money's become freer than free.
If you talk about a Fed just gone nuts, all the central banks going nuts.
So it's all acting like safe haven.
I believe that in a world where central bankers are tripping over themselves to devalue their currency, Bitcoin wins. In the world of fiat currencies, Bitcoin is the victor.
I mean, that's part of the bull case for Bitcoin.
If you're not paying attention, you probably should be.
What the fuck is going on? What do you think it's a state attack?
What?
FTX.
Oh, I don't care, honestly. I mean, people are going to pick the narrative that suits them best, and we're never going to find out the real truth anyway, so pick what suits you.
Yeah.
You know?
Logan, did you ninja launch on us? Yeah, he did. We're recording. What narrative suits you in this whole scenario?
Shitcoin's going to shitcoin, and shitcoin's going to blow up, and I'm glad that I like it better when they blow up than when they sustain. So that's how I look at it, you know. Sam Bankman-Fried, I first heard of him, and I'm pretty sure when he came on the scene, and what kind of made him famous was when he was kind of taking over DeFi, when DeFi was kind of dying early on. And he kind of like, I don't know, wasn't it like he like copied over Sushi Swap and saved it when it was going to die, and then he like kind of turned into like a huge, you know, DeFi proponent and kind of turned that whole Ponzi racket into a thing, and then he kind of used that as a foundation to keep, you know, the momentum he got to where he was eventually putting his logo on stadiums and scamming Tom Brady.
Tom Brady, Larry David. Bunch of retail investors.
That one was a big disappointment for me, man, because I only discovered Tom Brady. I mean, Larry David like maybe a year ago, less than a year ago, and I started binge watching like everything because I started watching the new season. And I was like, this is fucking awesome, and I went back and like watched all of them. Of course, the newer ones were a little more my flavor because the old ones are now kind of out of date. Like, you know, they're so old now. But I really liked all that, and I liked discovering. And I was like, Larry David is my soul animal, you know. And to see him on that commercial, at least he was saying things that was like skeptical the whole time, and now it actually looks like he was correct. They were trying to make it ironic, but yeah, it's what a weird, surreal thing to see all that happen. And I don't know. Now there's like Tether FUD around this, and it's just everybody's trying to like capitalize on it, but I'm happy to see Bitcoin go down to 15K, to see some draining of the swamp. I think I'd like to see even more, to be honest. I just think Ethereum's too high. Shitcoins are still too high. People have still too much hope in shitcoins. I liked it better when they would die 98% every bull market, you know?
I do as well. And you've been around for many bull
10
markets.
years.
Yeah. And so how would you quantify the events of this week compared to events of the last decade that have been considered big events, Mt. Gox, the fork?
Well, I made a tweet earlier, I think today, yesterday, saying that this is definitely my favorite bear market because for a couple of reasons. I didn't elaborate in the tweet, but one, obviously it's very entertaining to watch these big things blow up and you not be inside of them. But that kind of moves into the other reason why this is my favorite, and that this is the first time that I have fully been comfortable with my strategy and behaved myself. In other words, just done nothing. And in the past, you would want to trade. In my early years in Bitcoin, I was trading a lot, and that's kind of how the communities I was in the beginning. And learning all of the ups and downs and do's and don'ts and stresses and things related to that. Worrying about custody when sometimes an exchange would be down for a while and you weren't sure what was going on. All that bullshit. People say, "Oh, you're in Bitcoin 10 years, you must be bloody rich," and it's like, no, man. What happens is the first time you make some money, you pay off your car loan. You don't say, "I'm going to hodl forever." Your wife or ex-wife, is like, "All right, well, let's take care of some bills," and you can't really argue with that. It makes a lot of sense. And so, but after all the bullshit, you end up finally just kind of realizing, just do nothing, man. Just if you think the Bitcoin price is high, give your family a good Christmas. Don't go, don't sell all your Bitcoin. If you think the Bitcoin price is low, then maybe, annoy your boss to pay you faster. You don't have to trade. You definitely shouldn't be leveraging. And because I'm not doing any of those things, I can just be, at peace, focusing on work and getting joy out of my work. And I think that's the strategy. And I've been preaching the strategy for a while, but I've only been able to fully implement it recently,
Yes, I do know. So I find myself in a similar state of mind where it's watching all this shit blow up. I mean, it does suck to see people get wiped out, but there is a layer of Schadenfreude that slips in, and it's that's the thing with this whole FTX situation. I mean, it's been building. It's, I think many would argue, part of the contagion event that started in the spring of this year with Terra Luna, Celsius, 3AC, the mining space. Just that wave is continuing. But bringing it back to FTX and SBF specifically, I mean, you mentioned him cornering DeFi markets. That was after FTX rose out of nowhere. The whole way in which FTX came to be a dominant player in the space to the point where they could name the Miami Heat Arena, have all this marketing at the Super Bowl. I think they named another stadium in Arizona, a college stadium. And then the way SBF was vaunted as this whiz kid figurehead in the quote unquote space where he's.
And it's funny how it always happens, right? You had like Justin Sun last time, and there's always some kind of like idol that emerges, and he's like the wonderkind, and he's got the, he's got the angle, he sees the matrix, and then everybody gets wrecked.
Yeah. No, and this time around too, now that we're almost 15 years into Bitcoin's existence, the people that are getting wrecked by FTX specifically, like you mentioned Tom Brady, but you have big funds like Sequoia and other prominent incumbent venture capitalist funds that like to tout themselves as the creme de la creme that are going to do the best due diligence, are going to back the best founders. And then you see this blow up, and then a bunch of people are doing a retrospective on these incumbent VCs and their thesis for investing in FTX and the due diligence that went into it. And it just highlights again how early we are and how much people misunderstand about Bitcoin and why shitcoins are noise and Bitcoin is the signal.
Yeah, the strategy, I didn't specify it entirely, but the strategy is pretty simple, guys. Like, earn more than you spend, take what you don't spend and buy Bitcoin with it. And, just hodl as long as you can until that Bitcoin turns into something that you need to be able to use it for your family or your designs for your life. And that's it.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. And you're building tools to make that easy. What should we talk about first? I mean, we decided to record this last week before all of this happened. And the initial intention was to talk about the replaced by fee updates that seem to be getting pushed into Bitcoin Core and what that means for some services in the space and for mempools more generally. And then what you guys just launched at Synonym with Bitkit. How many times?
I'm just going to change the name at this point.
Does that happen? Does that happen a lot?
Just call it Synonym.
I'm sorry. I've got two sick kids under 3. I'm going on 2 hours sleep, so excuse my mispronunciations if they do.
I do it. It's normal.
Yeah. I actually got to test out the Bitkit last week. Had an insider in Austin who had access to the wallet, and I was able to send and receive from the wallet. It was pretty robust.
Is that insider my cousin?
Yes, it is.
Shane's awesome.
I don't want to dox him. I don't know if you want to let people know who's testing on that.
He's the only one in Austin that had access. So it's pretty easy. But yeah, so I guess let's talk about Bitkit. The conversation about the price and FTX is a little somber, and so maybe let's make it something a little more positive and exciting. So yeah, one of the things that we kind of announced during the Plan B conference in Lugano was our new wallet, Bitkit, and it's meant to be, as it says in the slogan, your ultimate Bitcoin toolkit. It supports Bitcoin, Lightning, and it has an implementation of Slashtags in the wallet, which is our own protocol for doing kind of the Web3 kind of thing, but without a blockchain. Everything in it is self-custodial, so you're holding the keys for your own Bitcoin on chain. You're holding the keys, and you have an LDK node for your Lightning node. LDK is this is the first, I think, public at least launch of LDK in a mobile app. I do need to make a note that Blue Wallet did implement it before we did, but they still are having it behind a kind of developer mode that you have to unlock to be able to play with it. Granted, we did realize and learn that LDK had some things that had to work out to be ready for production as well, but they've been really helpful in working with us on trying to iron out the remaining bugs so we can fully unlock Lightning features in the app. But as I was saying, it's got Bitcoin, it's got a Lightning node in there, and it has a bunch of cool features that kind of allow us to show a whole new user experience for a Bitcoin app or for a Bitcoin wallet. And that includes the stuff with Slashtags. So I don't know how long you want me to rant about features or if you want to ask some questions first, but that's the general overview. I just wanted to make the best Bitcoin wallet and show people that if you rethink things and start from scratch, that you could actually make a really nice looking wallet with really easy to use user experience, and you can kind of iron out a lot of the complexities of things like having Lightning, just by being very thoughtful and having a good design team and good approach.
Yeah, well, I think it's been a little over a year since you were last on the show. When you were in Austin, we recorded in person, and Synonym was just getting announced, and you were, I said it right. I just had to think, like, did I say it right? I said it right. It was just getting announced.
Yes.
And we're explaining this vision for Slashtags, building on Hole Punch. Last month we had Paolo Arduino on from Bitfinex and Tether, talking obviously about Tether and Bitfinex, but also Hole Punch and building Keat.io and Hole Punch. So it seems that a lot of development has happened with Hole Punch specifically over the last year since we last talked. Maybe we start there with the developments at that layer, maybe give a refresher of what that is and how you guys are using it to implement Slashtags.
Sure. So it gets confusing just to talk about this tech in the first place. So please, listeners, bear with me. A lot of these concepts are new, but also I want to clarify some things terminology wise, because it's still not, we're not all on the same page as a family of companies yet on what we call the different tech underneath what we're using. Because basically, Hole Punch is a company, but Hole Punch is also making a platform called Hole Punch. But Hole Punch platform is not public or released yet, and we haven't actually used it either. But what Hole Punch is a platform for is building apps with Hypercore. And so the underlying kind of lowest level of tech that we're all using for Slashtags, Hole Punch, Key, etc., is Hypercore. And that's been under development mostly by the same people at the Hole Punch company for years, and a few years even before Synonym existed. And they've been working with Paolo and doing various research for different technologies to kind of improve that platform or that technology, and add all the features and kind of battle test it, etc. And that has resulted in kind of these two, I guess you could call them, layers on top of Hypercore. One being the Hole Punch platform, which will be a way to apply use cases into having a sort of streaming app. And I don't just mean streaming in communication, but streaming the actual updates to the app and the pieces of the app, through Hypercore. And then also Slashtags, which is kind of a layer utilizing and providing a bunch of use cases for Hypercore as well. What Hypercore is, just as a refresher for anybody who cares or doesn't remember, it's basically like a souped up DHT, which is kind of like, think of it like BitTorrent, but with a few different characteristics that make it have a lot more power and a lot more use cases than BitTorrent. Namely that it uses these append logs as the file structure, which allows you to also now have keys be the thing that represents these logs. Just like you have Bitcoin keys, you can have pub keys for drives and for data, basically. And so this actually ends up becoming a really powerful and cool primitive for rebuilding the web entirely. It allows you to have a lot of asynchronous capability, so people don't have to kind of be communicating directly or online at the same time. It allows a lot of scaling capability because you have like mutual needs for files instead of global, state networks. So it challenges a lot of the use cases you might see blockchains trying to, champion. It shows how you can kind of do pretty much anything that any Web3 blockchain or any blockchain is claiming, really, without a blockchain at all. And so Slashtags shows how to kind of have metadata or any kind of data associated with a key that represents an actual entity, like a person or a server or a website. And so while Slashtags could easily be called an identity system, it is a little bit more abstracted than that. And so what we do is, instead of explaining all of this, because it's, I'm sure that this doesn't quite make sense to a lot of people who aren't like P2P enthusiasts or decentralized web enthusiasts, we just, show you in Bitkit. Like, here's what you can do just at the earliest stages of implementing this stuff, here are all the cool things you can do. And if you combine these things with Bitcoin and the user experience, and if you actually like are thoughtful about, what features and what problems you can solve for a user. And so in Bitkit, we have kind of two major categories of Slashtags, how we've implemented it. And keep in mind, we don't say Slashtags in the app, we just have these features. And so we have a public profile, which is kind of like the concept of if you have like a Twitter profile, except it's within the system. So your key controls the profile, you own the profile. It's not owned by us or some website, it's yours. And when you update the data, only you can do that because you are the one that has the key, and it requires the key to be able to do that. And so you have this nice area in the top of the wallet where you can like look at your profile, add an avatar, choose whatever name you want. You can add like a link list, sort of like Linktree or one of those kinds of things, and you can add as many links as you want. You can have a little bio, etc. But what we did was we realized it's really cool if you kind of combine this concept with contacts. And, usually in your phone, like you're trying to import your contacts from your old phone or another phone. And it's like this database that you manage. And eventually for everybody, it goes out of date, right? Like you have old stuff in there. And so this gives you a way to have the contacts be the same concept as like a social media profile, except your contacts own their profile. And so when you add someone or follow someone or add a contact to your contact list, what you're actually doing is you're adding their pub key to your list. And then you are pulling the current version of their profile every time you are looking at it automatically from them. And so it's their data. And so it's always up to date with whatever they want to be in there. And they can put anything they want in there. And another cool part about this is we've made a payment protocol within Slashtags as well, so you can actually pay your contacts. And so this makes it so like when you hit send in the wallet, yeah, you can put in a Bitcoin pub key or a Lightning invoice because it has those features. But if you want to instead, you can just choose somebody from your contact list, tap on their face, choose an amount, and click send. And I really mean it is that simple. You also don't have to like configure an invoice or anything like that, because the payment protocol we have inside, it actually looks at what payment methods are supported by the peers and that you can support in your app, and it matches them. It says, okay, this person can receive this right now, and you can send that right now, and it just matches the top thing on the list, and it just does the payment in the background. So the user doesn't see any of this. They just say, John, I want to send to John, here's how much, and they hit send, and then the apps figure out the rest. And so this is really a way to abstract a lot of complexity, and even more so in the future, because right now we just support Bitcoin and Lightning. But if we add things like later, we'll probably talk about like Pear Credit or, different types of Bolt 12, Bolt 11, PTLC channels, HTLC channels, Lightning address, all these different things that you have as payment protocols in Bitcoin, we can abstract them all below your pub key of your identity. And so you can just do the matching in the background. The user doesn't have to know or care what the current trend is in things. It just has to know whether or not you support something they support. So yeah, that's the kind of the first half of features of Slashtags in Bitkit. You have any questions or any comments on that stuff?
It seems like it's going to be a big UX improvement in terms of sending and receiving Bitcoin. Is this the intent with designing it this way?
Yeah, well, the intent was, like I said, I wanted to make it something that users didn't have to be bothered with how it works. They can just be, the least amount of friction between the problem they're trying to solve and the technology that makes that problem solvable. And so, like I said, it's just send. Like when you want to send, it's as few steps as you would think, and it works how you would like it to work. You just, I want to send to Marty. I choose Marty. I choose how much, and I click send. When you want to receive, it's just a QR code. Like there's no configuring or anything like that. There's no telling you what Bitcoin is or showing you weird, keys that you've never seen before. It's just a QR code, pay me, and you can share it, etc. And in the QR code, we support the kind of the multi QR. So there's a Bitcoin on-chain address and a Lightning invoice inside when you're connected to Lightning, and it does both at the same time. So again, the user does not have to know that Lightning exists to be able to give you a Lightning invoice. Now, the other cool part of this is, yes, we're making this very user-friendly, especially for new users or normies, but all of the features you would want as an advanced user are in there too. Like you can go in settings and you can turn on coin selection. You can go and when you hit receive, and you can tap on customize invoice and actually create a Lightning invoice like you would normally do in a Lightning wallet. All of the features are there. They're just, they have to be chosen by the user. So yeah, definitely user experience was a big goal of ours to improve on, and I think we have, and I think you're only going to see more because we have a lot of cool plans for what we're going to do moving forward. And I haven't even talked about the widgets side of thing yet.
Okay, let's get to the widgets, because I definitely want to touch on Slashtags in the context of what seems to be an increasingly competitive space in this Web3, Web5, whatever the fuck we're calling it, realm, where you have Nostr, like Fiat Jeff, and
that's actually the name of a presentation I did, is Web 1, 2, 3, 5. What the fuck?
Yeah.
And I did a presentation here in Lisbon at our meetup. But yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, whatever it is. So I mean, you have obviously Web5 block team working on that. Mike Brock, Daniel. You have what you guys are doing at Slashtags. You have the people working on Nostr, Fiat Jeff, and JB55, and it seems like, I mean, it's exciting for me as somebody who wants to use these types of products to see competition begin to heat up with these different things. Let's talk about the widgets, then we'll get to that competition.
Sure. So yeah, the other area of features in Bitkit that is unique for a wallet is, not only do you have your Bitcoin kind of wallet where you can see how much your total amount of Bitcoin, and you can get details like, about your on-chain and off-chain balance. And we express this as spending and saving, spending being Lightning balance, your Lightning capability, and savings being your on-chain capability. And there's also some cool UX in there for there's just a slider when you want to move your on-chain Bitcoin to Lightning. It's just a transfer button basically. And when you hit the transfer button, there's a slider and it asks you what percentage of your Bitcoin you want to be on Lightning. And what that actually does is it's integrated with Blocktank, our LSP server in the background. Again, we don't tell the user this. And it actually just requests a channel and purchases a channel from our LSP. And so the user, again, doesn't have to know about how this stuff works. They just say, I want to be able to send Bitcoin and pay instantly. And they opt into this. But yeah, with the widgets, sorry, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say, so user doesn't have to think, but obviously one of the questions that comes to an advanced user's mind is what are the trade-offs? Is there
so any... you can do it normally as well. As I mentioned earlier, all the things you would want to do or you've done in other wallets are also there. It's just the path that you choose. So when you're onboarding for Lightning, it doesn't say, here's what the Lightning Network is. It uses channels and unit capacity and blah, blah, blah. What it just says is quick setup or custom setup. If you choose quick, you get the slider. If you choose custom, you get a user flow that's basically, frame one, how much Bitcoin do you want to be able to pay instantly? In frame two, how much Bitcoin do you want to be able to receive instantly? Frame three, confirm your channel, and then it gives you some details like what this will cost to do, the fee basically that we charge, how long, the minimum time we'll keep the channel open, and you can actually tap on that to customize it if you want to. So all of the things you would want for control are still there. There's also a section in the settings where you can do a channel manager and see all your open channels, and you can manually close channels if you want to. It's got all the normal Lightning Wallet features. It just has paths for people that don't care about that stuff, that are low friction, and you can just go into the easy path if you want to.
So it's like a souped up autopilot.
Yeah, and we actually have autopilot features in there too for coin selection. By default, when it's in the autopilot mode for coin selection when you're managing your UTXOs, and there's actually 2 or 3 autopilot modes, one for minimizing UTXOs, one for maximizing privacy, these kinds of things. Or you can just turn on manual and just choose your UTXOs. So it's got all the features, and if anybody sees any features that it thinks are sorely missing, we'll consider adding them. For example, Francis Pulio from Bull Bitcoin, he had a rant not too long ago where he was like, the perfect Bitcoin wallet would be this and that and this and that. And I noticed one of the things in there that he really wanted, we didn't do. And I said, that could be tricky user experience wise. And then he brought it up again after he tried the wallet. He's like, the wallet's great, I love it, but why don't you have a passphrase, like the 13th word in a seed phrase? And I said, well, I wasn't sure if we could do it in a way that would like not confuse a normal user who didn't know what that is or care about it. And then, so after he requested it, we Alder and I took a look at like how we could do this, and Alder figured out a way to do it pretty smoothly. And so we will put it in. Maybe not the next version because we're doing another version update probably next week, but probably the version after that. And so you'll get that feature too if you want to use it. It'll just be, you have to opt into it. So a normal user will just like make a wallet and get their seed. But if you tap advanced, you'll be able to add a passphrase as well. But yeah, sorry, that's the, I forget if there was another part of your question there.
No, as I asked about trade-offs.
Okay.
Explain them.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, there are trade-offs in technology. There are trade-offs in user experience. We just did our best to kind of put the easy choice right in front of you with the least friction. And then if you want more complexity, there's an obvious thing for you to tap on to access that complexity. So the widgets, the cool thing with widgets. Okay, so widgets are like these Hypercore feeds in the background as far as the technology goes, but they can be served by anyone, and they don't have to be like partnered with us, with Synonym or any special like requirement or permissioned process by us. It'll just work if you use the /tags SDK and spec. And so we've included a few examples in there to show people some of the things you can do with widgets. But the general idea is these can be like souped up or more powerful, like sort of like RSS feeds, just a data feed. And so we have some examples there where we run a data stream, a Hypercore, where we are compiling all of the latest RSS feeds for all of the popular Bitcoin websites. And so we call it Bitcoin headlines. And if you add this widget, it's just basically the latest Bitcoin headline. And if you like the headline, you can tap on it and read that article. It'll open it up in a web browser. But the cool thing here is like that widget could be created by anybody. It doesn't have to be served by us. It could be served by anybody. It could be any type of headline, any type of style you wanted. And any app that wanted to implement /tags could show the same widget in their app. And so it's introducing this idea of like app Legos or interoperable little modules that you can have that work in anything, anywhere, from anyone, anywhere. And you don't have to ask permission. There's no like app store in between. It just, if the user wants this, they can scan a QR code and basically follow the pub key for that feed, and it will generate a widget inside of Bitkit that'll be like underneath, the widget for your wallet card or for your Bitcoin card, your balance there. But it gets cooler because, data feed is something you probably could have always done and tried to make this interoperable. But these data feeds can be about your key, for example. So say what we'll show very soon, Bitfinex has it working. They just haven't exposed it in the UI yet. But Bitfinex is going to allow you to have a /tags feed of your account. And so in Bitkit, you'll be able to, without visiting Bitfinex at all, you'll be able to see like your balance on Bitfinex or your profit and loss on your current trade. Basically, any data that Bitfinex wants to put in the feed could be rendered inside of this widget window inside of Bitkit. And so imagine now any Bitcoin app or any app for anything could do this. So in your Bitkit wallet, you could see like your balance on Bitfinex. You could see your current reward points in Bitrefill. You could see the latest replies on Stacker News. Anything correlated or related specifically to you could also be a feed. And so this gets interesting, right? Because now Bitkit isn't just showing you your money, it's showing you your data or your account data from anywhere. And anybody can do this again without interfacing with us as a company. They just have to create the feed in a way that Bitkit understands. That's it. And then finally, you and your listeners are probably familiar with like logging in with a key, right? You have like LNURL auth and some other thing, probably Web 5 stuff and Web 3 stuff. I know like Ethereum has like a Web Connect or these kinds of things with MetaMask. It's not a new concept, but we've kind of turned it up again and added a lot more capability because we can associate data with a key, right? And so what we do is instead of having like LNURL auth where it's a one-way authentication and it's merged, basically your account is merged with a domain name, which domain names are inherently custodial, right, and censorable. The website is a key, you're a key, and you don't really even care where the domain name is, which means if you're trying to say log into a website that is censorable, like say the Pirate Bay or something, and they get their domain seized, well, the Pirate Bay can spin up a domain anywhere, and as long as you know how to find them and wherever they are with their key, you can still authenticate with their website. And so you can see how this is like showing how this kind of circumventing of DNS entirely is giving people this uncensorability, and it also makes it harder to be middleman attacked. Like if you try to log in with /tags to a fake Bitfinex website, all that will happen is it'll create a new account on that website. They don't have your account, so they can't prove that they are Bitfinex. And so the worst thing that would happen is you'd log into a fake Bitfinex that didn't have your account in there. And so it kind of prevents this kind of middleman attack as well that domains kind of inject into things. And one more thing about it is once you've established an account with a website like this, you can also, instead of scanning, you don't even need to scan the QR code anymore. You can actually just tap on the widget to log in because it can do the key authentication in the background, receive a deep link from the website, and just log you into the website automatically.
Just so I fully understand this Pirate Bay example, obviously, yes, DNS is very centralized. So in this example, where you authenticate via /tags with the Pirate Bay, basically the way websites work is they have a back end filled with data that's feeding a front end that just connects to a website. And that website, due to DNS, is a centralizing factor. DNS can block that website at any point. So what you're saying with /tags authentication, if for whatever reason
both sides authenticate, basically.
Both sides authenticating. That they're authenticating that you're a user, and you're saying, hey, this is how I want to interact with your website.
Because the website you're trying to, you know the key of the website, right? And so because when you make an account using /tags, you're getting it from a key in the first place, right? And so that website is now a key to you, and so nobody else but that website has that key. Assuming that the feds don't go and find the person and confiscate the key, much like confiscating a Bitcoin, it's a much more difficult thing to do than confiscating a domain name.
Yes, so that's where what I want to make clear, you're separating a website, which is an entity, from the domain name, which is like a URL associated with that entity. So
if they confiscate the server, there's nothing you can do, right?
But they can confiscate the domain name, and then they Hydra pop up somewhere else, and you just authenticate. The URL can be completely different.
So the censorship resistance is that the domain name doesn't matter, only the key matters, and the safety or security difference is the middleman. If he does manage to middleman you, like you try to sign into Bitfinex using /tags, and then all that will happen is another widget will pop up. You'll have two widgets, one for Bitfinex and one for Bitfinex. And your Bitfinex account will just look the way it always does. And your Bitfinex account will be like a zero balance account. And you'll just be like, okay, that's not what I'm looking for. And they won't get any secret info from you. They won't get your password. They won't get anything.
It's pretty fascinating. Obviously this is all dependent on Hypercore. And again, go back to my conversation with Paolo last month. He got me really jacked up about this. What do you think needs to happen in terms of adoption of Hypercore, that layer, to make this all mainstream? Is it bringing apps like Bitkit and normalizing /tags, and then people recognizing the utility of that? Is there anything in terms of user adoption at the like protocol hypercore level that you think needs to happen to really throw gas on this fire?
Sure, there's a few things that need to happen, including, well, I'll try to end this with a segue to the competition. But aside from the competition, there's just general business development, adoption of the technology, and that's something we're dedicated to. We have a dedicated business developer that's just for Slashtags and doing integrations, and we have several people on the team already that are assisting with integrations, and we have already at least half a dozen people implementing right now. And so you're very quickly going to see more and more people creating widgets, adding authentication to their website, and it won't just be nobodies; it'll be people you've heard of. Right now, even on launch, we already had somebody that had implemented the authentication on launch day. Starbacker, they're kind of doing almost like an OnlyFans kind of website, and they really like all of the things I just described to you. The ability to have the data come from a DHT, so they don't necessarily have to always host the data, and they can kind of move over to this less censorable format. They don't have to have an email address from the user. The user can have a profile that they control. That profile can be portable. They can be uncancelable. All these things are really great narratives for a website that's trying to kind of compete with OnlyFans, but with Bitcoin, and do social media stuff. And so they're really excited, and they're gonna be supporting a lot of the features that we're doing as well. But as I mentioned, we have Bitfinex. You're probably going to see stuff next year from Bitrefill and other friends of ours that are implementing. But basically, we're dedicated to helping people implement this technology, because we know that bootstrapping it is work. It's new, and we want to make sure it's easy to do. So the more times we help people implement it, the easier we can make the process and polish the tools that are required and make it as easy as possible. Also, some other things that have to happen aside from just adoption and business development are everything we do is JavaScript, and Hypercore is Node.js. We use a lot of Node.js stuff. Our app is React Native, and if you aren't compatible with this stack, you are pretty much in a roadblock to implement this stuff until we go to the lower level and start re-implementing Hypercore modules in a native language like Rust or C++ or something. And so we're already talking about that, because I want everybody to be able to use this. And so that's more work that we'll have to do, is identify which of these aspects of Hyper need to be recreated in native language, whether we need to make language bindings for popular languages, things like this. So there's going to be endless work, honestly, to do, just to keep polishing everything and to keep adding. There's just tons and tons of use cases, because you really can rebuild the whole web this way. And so we have a lot of cool features we have planned for 2023. We're doing road mapping now. But to kind of bring this back to the competitive thing, one tricky part about all of this is, I've learned that interoperability is kind of like a meme. It's not really a real thing. Interoperable means if everybody does the same format you do, everybody follows the protocol you follow. And while you have things like LNURL using a key to log in and Slashtags using a key to log in, I've already explained how the process is actually pretty different, right? And they have different interactions when you're trying to do the process. That will also be true with DIDs and Web5. It's true with MetaMask and WebConnect and these things. And so interoperability isn't just on the protocol, it's also in the languages that I mentioned. And so if everything that, I don't know what Web5 is doing, let's say if everything they're doing is in Go or something, then you're going to have this kind of legion of Go people using their stuff, a legion of JavaScript people using our stuff, and who knows, and LNURL people using LNURL stuff. And so there's going to be actual competition, not just across features, but across protocols and specs and across languages and language stacks. So it's really tricky for the user, because in the end, they don't give a shit about any of this stuff. They just want it to work, and they want it to work as much as possible and do as many cool things as possible. So I think the competition is going to end up being more on user experience and shipping and solving problems and giving people features that really excite them and give them capabilities they couldn't do before. I don't think anybody cares if I put out a pitch deck or deck that explains all the architecture of Hypercore and all the here's a node and here's all the pieces, here's a DHT. Like, yeah, builders and people that are enthusiasts will care, but users, they just want it to work. They want it to behave how they expect it to behave when they need it to, and that's it. And so that's why our focus is mostly on simplifying things and showing, here is something you can do that you couldn't do before.
Yeah. I mean, it would be pretty massive if we can re-architect the web. Because this is like, I'm just imagining, like, we're in the process here at TFTC of open sourcing our BTC Pay server Ghost implementation. And that's something DJ, who's our CTO, has been building this out, packaging it up for people, and I have been talking about for a while. Is like, we would love to hack Ghost where we could have like a users log in via something like LNURL auth or something like Slashtags, like hacking that in, and like you can begin, just in my mind thinking this through, it seems like there's an easy path, particularly with open source technologies like Ghost and BTC Pay server, where you can just gut a certain part of that stack, implement this stuff, and you don't have to re-architect that CMS or that payment processor from scratch. You just become interoperable with your guys' system.
Yeah, I don't know a lot about Ghost, but it sounds a lot like WordPress. And that would be the idea, is that as this gets popular, more and more tools that people are used to having are going to need to be integrated with these features. And, it's not a coincidence that we're using Node.js and JavaScript and React Native. These are all very web-friendly, this is a very web-friendly stack, and we care about rebooting the web. And so that's why we're using such a stack. And so I think that it'll be a little easier for us than people who do not make that decision. But they'll have some advantage and trade-off for whatever they chose as well. So we'll see who's right. I'm pretty confident in the tech, both the design of the tech, the architecture, DHT as underlying structure for the network, and append logs as a structure for the data. Like, I couldn't find anything better that made more sense to me. So I'm pretty confident and happy with what we're choosing. But we'll see how it plays out, because somebody has to write like a plugin that lets a website, a WordPress website, be able to offer /tags keys as accounts for login instead of, email and password, or in addition to. And all of these things are going to take time to kind of, rebuild this infrastructure that people are used to having. Although some of it will be possibly obsoleted with some of the, the multi capabilities of some of these features. Like, I don't know if we really need email anymore, for example. Like, you can use, these drives as basically inboxes as well. Like, the primitive of the design here is basically, I'm a key and I have a drive that I own about my key that only I can put data in. You're a key, but I can also make a drive about you that I put data in that is only for you. And so if you do the same thing, now we have basically the entire primitive of the web. I have an account for you, and I have a drive for me. You have an account for me, and you have an account and a drive for you. And that's all we need to be able to do everything. Chat, messaging, websites, CDNs, Google Drives, everything you want to do can be built from those primitives.
This may be a stupid question, but it's mobile first, obviously, but it'll work on desktops, laptops as well, correct?
Well, right now, Key is on desktop only, and I bring up Key because they are also using the same underlying tech, and so yes, on desktop. And I believe that Key's Hole Punch platform, when they open source it and release it, I believe in December they're going to do that, is primarily for desktop. Bitkit is obviously mobile. We did it in React Native because we wanted to be able to bring it to desktop at some point. We don't have immediate plans to do that. I'm in the middle of road mapping. So by the end of the year, I'll have a more clear picture on exactly what we plan to do for 2023. But I'm skeptical that desktop Bitkit is going to be on that roadmap. And then web, you can see that we've already started implementing a lot of the use cases there. And I don't just mean like for the website, I mean being able to do like /tag stuff, like, you know, using your keys, not like as a user, not just as the website. We've kind of shown how you can start doing some of that stuff already if you go to our website, we made a website just for /tags, slashtags.to. We have like everything you would want to learn about /tags there, all links to all the code, all the modules, and we have this really cool playground. And the playground is something you can interact with Bitkit to kind of test both the technology and see examples of ways you can apply this tech, but also, you know, actually be able to have it in your hands and, you know, see how to implement the user experiences for this technology. So it's a lot of hand-holding, a lot of, you know, giving people ideas of what they could do. And I think that if you're creative, you'll realize that you can do pretty much anything with this stuff.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And then key management. Keys are created on the device, stored on the device on your phone if you're using Bitkit. Backups, very similar to backing up private keys for...
I'm glad you brought that up. I forgot to mention that. The key stuff is actually pretty cool. Like, this isn't just like crude use of keys. There's actually the guys at Hole Punch helped us with some of the underlying structure of the cryptography. The team has cryptographers and they're very talented. And we have the keychain aspect of /tags. And how that works is we actually use your Bitcoin seed. And so when you want to restore your Bitkit wallet, literally all you need is the seed. And that seed, we have a derivation path to generate a master key for your /tags. Now, /tags doesn't use the same curve as Bitcoin. Like, you can't send Bitcoin to a /tags pub key. It's not the same format. But you can derive that key from your Bitcoin seed. And so when you restore your wallet, what it does is it checks your Bitcoin addresses just like a wallet normally would. It knows your Lightning information, and it can automatically generate your master /tags key and any keys that could generate. And now for your /tag stuff, it goes and pulls it from the DHT. It says, oh, here are all the keys that I followed, and it starts downloading them, just like downloading a bunch of torrents from any of the seeders that have that data. And Synonym, our company itself, we actually redundantly keep backups for free. So you don't have to use iCloud or Google Drive or these things like this. We have your backups as well, but only you can retrieve them with your key. And so as long as you have your key, you can get a backup from us too of your Lightning state, your Lightning channels, everything. Your wallet metadata, all of your contacts data. And so you could also recreate the entire experience offline without accessing the DHT, as long as either you have a copy of the file of your data in your seed, or you at least retrieve a copy from us. But either way, the amount of connectivity you have, it will just start seeding everything from whoever has it and populate your entire wallet from just a seed if you are connected. And so that's really cool. And then in the upcoming version, we're going to implement the added feature with the key structure where we're adding tweaks. And I don't know how much you or your audience know about these. I've only just started learning about them a couple months ago. But the tweaks are a way to basically solve problems with multiple devices. So like if you want to have your /tags, contacts and different data in one phone, but also on another phone, or, in one wallet from us and also a wallet from some other company. Or if we end up making a desktop wallet, you want to have it in both places, and they will synchronize. And so you can actually have the same account in two places. Like, this is something you can't do with Lightning, for example, but you'll be able to do it with /tags. And so the tweaking allows you to basically create like these topics around keys. And the tweaking has a bunch of other cool features too. Like, you can make it so a select group of people in your contact list that you want to, if you want them to, can be able to find you in any platform. So I could say, okay, is John using Starbacker? And I could check for his tweak, within Starbacker and see if John has it could be my current pub key or any pub key related to that tweak to see if I'm also there, and they could find me there and see if I'm there, but only if I share that tweak with them. And so that tweak is just a way to have a topic around keys to associate them voluntarily. And so I believe key association is a cool problem and a cool way to address what other designs are doing differently. Like, for example, Web 5 is using key rolling and key revocation, and they're using Bitcoin as a broadcasting mechanism. But the problem with this is it has an assumption that you will never lose your master key. Now, if you're willing to take that assumption, you don't really need a blockchain. You can have a Hypercore drive that people treat as an authority the same way and just go ask that drive, right? So we are, with all of our products, continually proving that you don't need a blockchain for anything but Bitcoin. And so that will follow through later when we talk about Pear Credit. It follows true when we talk about Slashtags. But yeah, I'm ranting now. The cryptography behind the keychain of Slashtags is cool as well.
Yeah, no, I've never heard of tweaking. That does sound really cool and useful. On top of that, I mean,
we're not the inventors of it by any means. I think RGB uses tweaking for some things, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if Web 5 uses it for some things too. It's very useful. It's when you do P2P stuff, you have a new set of problems that are actually really difficult to deal with, and so you end up having to innovate sometimes in different ways. And tweaking is one of the ways to kind of compensate for some of the trade-offs of P2P.
Yeah. P2P web. What are the biggest hurdles? Or not hurdles, but biggest, like, what are the scaling issues with this? What is holding it back? What are potential problems with Hypercore? What are the drawbacks?
So I would say, I guess, yeah, I never got to actually comparing to the competition, which I think is maybe related to what you're asking. Like, what are the trade-offs from this design compared to another design? As far as just scaling in general, like, this structure is meant to be able to be done by anybody, like using a potato for a computer, as long as they're doing it peer-to-peer. If you're trying to do something at scale, then you have to be able to have somebody who's providing that scale for you. But the cool thing about this design is because the data is only writable by your key. In other words, it's authorized data with integrity. It's like a blockchain. And actually, the append log uses blocks too. And so, but because it is a block, and because it is appendable and you can add data, it's cooler than a BitTorrent because you can have a data stream. You can update. It can represent a website. It can be a video chat. It can be a chat room, whatever you want. But again, because only your key can write to your drive, anybody can host your drive, and they can, and so it doesn't matter if they like you, if they censor you, whatever. They can't change the drive, and if they do try to change the drive, people won't see it from them because it won't have the integrity that they're looking for in the header of the file. And so, to get scale out of this system works the same way as the web works now, except you're not locked in. There's no walled garden. So you can have, say, a hyper cloud, like instead of Google Cloud or Amazon Cloud, except it can be any server you want, any provider you want. And they can all have they can all compete on their prices and their download speeds and their availability. And you can have as many seeders as you want and have that data as redundant and available and geolocated as you want. But they can't censor you other than just say, I'm not going to seed this data for you anymore, and get somebody else to do it. So you can still have scale. Like, this is one of the problems with P2P stuff is, yeah, decentralized Twitter is cool until you figure out how the hell you have to scale this thing, because you can't, even if you own your Twitter feed, you can't have 100,000 followers, always constantly downloading from your laptop to get your latest tweet. It doesn't work. And so what you want is you want to give users the ability to do that when they need to or when they want to render the data locally and provide the data directly. But when you need scale, you can still have that option because you have integrity for the data. So that's not a trade-off per se. I'm kind of telling you a bit of how the system addresses the trade-offs, because I think all of the trade-offs are addressable. I would say the downside would be some of these things are not yet proven at large scale, even on the P2P level. So for example, like in Keat right now, if you try to have a room with 1,000 people in it, it probably will blow up, because you have all these different connections from all these different people trying to communicate asynchronously, but then have this eventual consistency. You're going to get weird things happen. And I'm sure Matthias would tell you how they express, but my guess it would be something like the chat feed would like look one way 1 minute and another way another minute, and kind of update almost like when you're downloading a website and it's not giving you all the page, in a row. It's giving you certain parts first that it gets first, because that's how the seeding works, right? It's like BitTorrent. So some seeders are going to give you some parts of the file faster than other parts. And so if you fall behind, you're going to get weird user experiences until everything catches up. And if you have 1,000 people spamming in the room, like say in a Twitch chat, like when you get these guys spamming emojis the whole time, then it's not going to keep up. And so you have to now make sure that if you're trying to do something at scale, that you are designing it in a way that can scale. And so you have to make sure if you're trying to have 1,000-person chat room or have 100,000 Twitter followers, that you are using a scaled seeder as a service and not trying to do it from your laptop. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Now, I don't know enough about the architecture of Web 5 and Web 3 especially to say where they're better or worse, so much to say that I know that Web 5 is not using a DHT and seeders. I know they have a concept of like a decentralized web node. And so I'm going to guess, forgive me, Dan, I know he hates when I misrepresent his project because he's even more competitive than I am. But I believe they're going with like expecting that the user will have a server, kind of like expecting the user to have their own Bitcoin node, expecting them to have their own Lightning node. You're expecting the user to have some kind of, at least online all the time server. That's my guess. Now, maybe they probably do have some solutions for addressing asynchronous or when the user is offline. But as far as I know, it's not a DHT, it's something else. I haven't looked into it lately to see what they're doing for this kind of stuff. Another trade-off there is for the identity system, they are heavily spec'd up. And so they're following DID, they're creating specs, they're very, very spec-oriented, and they want to kind of lead the design and lead the bootstrapping through spec. They want to say, oh, you have to follow the spec, here's the spec. So they're prioritizing, making these specs detailed and giving people something they really have to follow closely and obey a little more than probably we are prioritizing. And we're prioritizing instead, like putting it in your hands, bootstrapping it, making it easy to use, things that get us moving faster and things that are less rigid. Like the drives that we use, these hyper drives to represent the data for a slash tag, they're just a drive, and you can put whatever you want in there. The widgets and the feeds, they're just a drive, and you can shape the data however you want. We believe that the schemas of the data will compete. And so the most popular schema will be the one that is supported by the most people. But we don't want to pretend that we can control the spec of that. Like we don't want to pretend that we're going to be the ones to be, touched by God and magically know what the exact format is going to be best for everybody. And so we're kind of leaving it a little more abstract, a little more open. And so that's cool because say DID spec does become like the spec everybody expects for when they're doing, any type of identity stuff with keys. Slashtags can do that easily. You just take a drive and you just support the DID spec inside of a hyperdrive, and that's it. It's not a problem. But what if that isn't what it is? Then Web 5 won't be able to do that. They're spec'd, they use rigid spec. And so that's a difference as well, is that they're heavily spec'd. They're trying to get W3C to bless everything they're doing with their specs. They're a little more, maybe complicated in their stack, but this may provide benefits to their stack. I don't know. Like I said, I like our stack a lot. Then another difference would be that they depend on Bitcoin for their identity stack as well. So which means that there has to be a Bitcoin node somewhere and involved with their identity process. We don't have that dependency. So if somebody is not interested in Bitcoin, they can still use Slashtags. And that doesn't mean that if they're interested in shitcoins, it means if they just don't want to talk about money at all, it can be just a website that has nothing to do with money. It's a free website and they could use Slashtags, or it's a website that you don't have a balance of any kind, but you do have an account, they could use Slashtags. So it's a little more free form. And so there are trade-offs there as well.
Fascinating. It's really incredible to see how far this has come since we were in my backyard a little over a year ago. Maybe exactly a year ago.
Well, I mean, it started, honestly, some of this design started like 13 years ago. I started trying to think about this stuff back before I even was in Bitcoin. I probably said this in a podcast, I'm not sure it was yours, but part of the oldest inspiration of Synonym was I was a huge Google fan and I wanted to get a job at Google, but I'm not an engineer. And I was like, how can I get them to hire somebody like me? I know I'm creative. I know I can offer them something. I just want to work there. And so I started to design a Google killer. And I said like, oh, if I go to Google and I show them how I'm going to kill Google, they're hiring me for sure. I never made that attempt, but I did work on the design a lot. And it is part of the primitives of what we're doing with Slashtags.
Interesting. What was your Google killer original design?
So we haven't gotten to that stage yet with Slashtags, but we had to build, in other words, it requires all of the things that we're putting in place to be able to do the design that I would kill Google with. And we will make this design, and I can't promise we will kill Google, but we'll definitely give people the option to kill Google. And so the idea, to put it pretty simply, is to inverse the relationship of the Google algorithm and its users to where the users are the algorithm. And so instead of telling the user what matches their search, the user tells the web of trust or their network, the people whoever they want to ask. Could be one server, they could literally ask Google, or they could ask 50 people that they trust, or they could ask 20 people that they trust only in a specific way. But what you do is you assume the website is all the data. I mean, the web is all the data. It's just this noise of data, face melting, everything. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to give people these knobs they can turn, like noise filters, until they get the sound that they want. And what this basically is giving people a way to customize their perspective on data. And it's essentially how they weight data. And so Google does this a little bit, and a very simple way to express what I'm explaining is when you click the image tab in Google, you only get images, right? And there's metadata related to images. The search is in the context of images. When you type something in that search bar and then you choose images, Google interprets it differently, right? And that's a perspective. So Google did, and when I had this idea, the tabs didn't even exist in Google yet. It was still just a search bar, and I'm feeling lucky. And then they evolved like the news tab, the images tab. And so I saw they were starting to get the idea, but they never gave the user capability for them to choose the weighting of the data. And that's the difference is if the user chooses the weighting of the data and the template of the search, not just the search term, but like what qualifies within the search term, they become the algorithm. They get to weight the data, and they can take different perspectives when they're searching for different types of data. But it won't be just, hey, I'm searching for images. It'll be, hey, I'm searching for images from my family. Or I'm searching for images from my family from people that I actually like the images of these family members. You know what I mean? Or I'm searching for tweets that are from famous golfers that are also interested in weather forecasts, and like you can start applying these weightings to use these as searches and but really filtering of the data instead of searching the data. And you're saying, here's my filter, and you ask you ask the peers that match that filter, what do you have under this filter? And then you get a new perspective of data. I hope that makes sense.
No, it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense.
Or here's another cool way to look at it. A perspective could be much like you apply it to Twitter again. Instead of me having a Twitter feed of all the people that I follow, I could say, show me Marty's Twitter feed. Show me what Marty sees when he's looking at his Twitter feed. So I take the perspective of everything you filter out and you care about, people you follow, people you've blocked, people you've muted. And so I can take your perspective. And that's the difference here is it's taking perspectives through filtering data and organizing data, and that data, and also on the sense of who you are even asking for the data.
In your mind, what is the magnitude of this shift in relationship between individuals and the web if you're successful, if any of these projects are successful in creating this flipped model of a more decentralized web compared to the hyper-centralized web that we have today?
So while I can't say for sure whether I've got the right formula, I think this approach is necessary and inevitable. And so I think we'll end up there eventually. But there may be roadblocks on the way, roadblocks like, the big tech may, make it much more enticing over time to just stay and keep things the way they are. The government may make it difficult to be as free as you need to be able to accomplish this goal. People just might not give a shit. It might be they might not want to think about it. They might just enjoy the free, ad subsidized web and not want to click an extra button or configure their own, web of trust or really think about who they trust more other than how many people follow them or how rich they are. Humans might just like these really crude heuristics for measuring things and just not be ready or have the time or interest to be more granular about how they manage their reputation. So that makes it kind of mine or whoever is in the future that continues to try to solve this problem, makes it our responsibility to really show people, again, here are things you could do that you couldn't do before. Here's the power you have now. And here's how easy it is for you to wield this power in a way that helps you and solves problems for you. And I think we can do that. I don't know how long it will take to finish, the technology and making the tools, or how long it will take for people to adopt and care about it. But it is my passion, and I think it's worth building. And I think it's extremely complementary to the ideals and mission of Bitcoin as well, because Bitcoin is like self-sovereign money, and this is all about like self-sovereign data. It's like your self-sovereign digital life, basically, and this is the whole formula.
Yeah. Yeah, again, there's so much competition. You get like the Web3 stuff, then you get into like Start9 Labs, Umbrel, like these.
Well, Start9, some of the things you mentioned are actually complementary. Start9 Labs, Umbrel, even Nostr is fairly complementary to what we're doing. Like Nostr could use Slashtags, and they could take advantage of Hypercore DHT as a data structure underneath and still do all the work that they're doing. It's not, in other words, Nostr is not on the same competition level as Web 5 or Web 3. Web 3, I'm honestly not worried about at all because they're just going to fuck it up because they're going to be distracted with trying to, force a blockchain into this and force investment into this somehow. And so they have to fuck up. Maybe inadvertently they'll make some good research. Like IPFS is not horrible. I prefer the structure we're using to it, but it is actually one of the better research outcomes of shitcoinery. Filecoin is useless, but IPFS itself, they've been working hard and for a long time to solve P2P problems. I just think they made some decisions I wouldn't have chosen, and my engineers feel the same way, and so we don't really use it. Although there are some tools they made that I think we do use, like that we don't use like their whole structure, but they've made so many things that there are some tools that are just generally useful that they have as well. So there's that. But yeah, Start9 and Umbrel, these are home servers, right? So like these could be, Hypercore nodes, and they could be seeding data and downloading data from the swarm, and they could be participating as well. As a matter of fact, I hung out with most of the Start9 team when we were in the Bitcoin Amsterdam conference not long ago, and I pilled the fuck out of them. I'm pretty sure they're excited to talk again and see how we can get something Slashtags represented somehow in their system as well. So not everything is competition. Some of it is extremely complementary.
Hell yeah. I'm excited for you. I'm excited for humanity. I'm excited for Bitcoiners. I'm excited. I'm excited to begin testing it out. Is TFTC in the widget RSS feed?
Do you have an RSS?
Yeah. Are we not in the headlines widget? It would be pretty miffed if
I doubt it.
Jesus.
You could make a TFTC widget that was only your feed if you wanted.
Maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll skip right to that.
But this is like, you mean a podcast feed, right?
No, I'm talking about the newsletter.
Oh no. I know what you're talking about. Sorry, I thought you meant like the podcast. I didn't actually know. I always thought of it as an email, and so I always forget. I see the links in Twitter. I just never made the connection. I always thought of it as an email newsletter.
Pretty miffed.
Sorry, man.
I'm fucking with you.
I'll get right on that.
No, I'm fucking with you.
I'll literally tell them right now to add the TFTC RSS.
Actually, we may have to add RSS. I could be just bullshitting out of my ass right now.
Oh, come on, man. You're trolling me hard now. Why is my mouse moving so weird?
Where can anybody who's so interested that's listening right now, obviously download Bitkit. Where are they compatible? Is it Android, Apple?
Yeah, Bitkit is available on Android and Apple. Lightning is not fully unlocked on either of them. It will work with small transactions on Android. It will not work at all on iOS, but we are literally testing tomorrow a build to fix that. I'm not sure if it will make the ship time early next week, if the Lightning will be fully unlocked, but that's the goal, is within either next week or at most 2 weeks after that to have Lightning working. But yeah, Android and iOS, we have a website for each product now. So you can go to bitkit.to to learn all about Bitkit and all the features and get all of the videos and stuff about it. We have slashtags.to to do, like, anybody who wants to learn about implementing that, the playground, slashtags SDK. And we have blocktank.to as well if you want to look at the LSP stuff. Side announcement with that was we have a new kind of service for Blocktank called Blocktank Instant, which is just a dedicated API for exchanges to be able to just add Lightning, depositing, withdrawing without having to run a node at all and without having to hire a Lightning person at all. Just trying to really push for exchanges to support Lightning. So we have that as well. We have a website for Blocktank. And then, of course, we have the Synonym website, synonym.to. So anything you want to learn, you can go to those places. We have Telegram chat. We have a Discord chat now. GitHub is Synonym Dev. All the links that you would want, you'll find what you're looking for.
And you guys are hiring in the bear market.
Yes, hiring multiple Node.js devs, hiring a marketing manager so we can start building a marketing team to start promoting Bitkit once it's out of beta. Hiring a project manager because I can't manage this whole team the way I used to because it's growing. I've never had a company with this many people before. We're at about 14 now, and we're about to add 4 more. So I need help. And we're hiring, what was the last thing? Oh, another mobile dev to help add some more manpower to the app team.
Hell yeah. It's a good signal, hiring in the bear market. A lot of people are going in the opposite direction. All right.
Well, thankfully, our owner, our primary owner, Tether, is not involved with any of these scary lending practices and has operated, intelligently, conservatively during this past bull market and didn't have to worry about 3AC exploding and Celsius exploding. And
but FTX is shorting Tether right now.
Shorting Tether is like nonsense, right? Because you go to Tether and you redeem the Tether. And so the only reason to care about a price movement in Tether is if Tether stops redeeming. Then that is a major signal, right? Because now Tether is not backing its word. And so far that's not happening. I believe Paulo was just tweeting today how they just they just process 70 million or something of withdrawals, and there's no issues with withdrawals right now and redemptions. From what I read, if it's even true, because Sam was saying something about how the Twitter rumors aren't even true, but what I read is that somebody is trying to make some sort of play where there's low liquidity in the DeFi structures that use stablecoins, and so they tried to kind of like empty one out to be able to they tried to monopolize one so they could like empty out another one and cause a lot of slippage. And so this affects like the averages, because now all of the exchanges that have Tether are trying to arbitrage the slippage. And so it causes an overall slightly lower price. Like I think Tether was trading at like 0.995 instead of 1 today. And if you short Tether in a huge amount at high leverage, maybe it's profitable. I don't know. I'm sure shorting Tether, if it actually crashed, would be very profitable. But that doesn't appear to be what's happening. You know, I don't work at Tether and have a behind the scenes view or anything. I'm just regurgitating what Paulo has tweeted and what I see.
Yeah. And having spoken with Paulo last month, I mean, it was really impressive how they handled redemptions during like the Celsius 3AC blowups. They did billions of dollars in a matter of days. It's weird. I mean,
he was telling me it was something like, they're not sure if there's even a way to measure, but they think they processed like the most, the transfer of the largest amount of money ever of any entity, including large banks. Like they couldn't find any example where anybody had ever redeemed or processed that much money that fast and ever. So I think they're okay.
Yeah. For anybody worried about their short-term commercial paper exposure, it's not there anymore.
Yeah, they've been transitioning out of that. Of course, in the end, like I don't want to pretend like this isn't about shilling Tether. Like in the end, all constructions for stable anything, the main question is, who do you trust? I don't care if it's a stable channel, an oracle, a hedge, a stable coin. It doesn't matter. The main question is, who do you trust? Because you have to trust somebody to be able to convert value from meat space into digital space, no matter what the design is. There's somebody trusted that's doing that. And so the question is always, who do you trust? And so that's why we work on reputation stuff, is because I believe trust is always going to be useful, even post-hyper-Bitcoinization. We just need to give people much better tools for managing and measuring that trust so they can make better decisions about who to trust and what to trust them with. And so with Tether, you can say, okay, look, they've existed X amount of years. They've had here are the actual problems they've had. Here's how they have responded to those problems. And then you can compare that to any competitor and say, who do I trust? And really the question is first, I guess, is if you even need it. Like if you need it, then you decide who you trust. If you don't need it, do something else. Don't become obsessed with whether or not this is a systemic risk or whether or not they're like not showing the right audits, because audits are bullshit. Proof of reserves is bullshit. All that matters is if you trust them, because if they're not trustworthy, they're going to figure out how to get around any type of attestation or any type of system they put in place to make you feel safe. They have to be trustworthy. If and that's the end of it.
Yeah. Yeah. The proof of reserves memes come back this week. The best proof of reserves for weeks is to move Bitcoin into a wallet that you control.
I don't like the trend. While I appreciate the research and the science of it, I just don't like the trend of Bitcoiners having a lot of interest in custodial tech. And like I just feel like something like proof of reserves, if you figure out this real cool cryptographic way to show everybody that you have their Bitcoin, it just makes people think, okay, I don't have to worry about who do I trust anymore. Like I have a system. But this is just not true. Like custody requires trust. I don't care what contraption you put in the middle, trust is required. And that's true of any custodial system. And so Bitcoiners the reason why Bitcoin is great is it's trustless. And so if you're not using Bitcoin in a trustless way, why are you using Bitcoin? So I don't think that we should get too excited about custodial science, because in the end, Bitcoin was made to stop doing that.
Yes. Stop leaving your Bitcoin on exchanges. I mean, we have people like Udi going out there and saying, "Oh, exchanges are a safe place to hold your Bitcoin."
Here's my ref link.
FTX being one of them. Here's my ref link, and I think I think he's sufficiently burned his reputation. Certainly this week.
Well, I would have thought that a long time ago, but I don't know. Like whenever I say something reasonable, the more reasonable thing I say, the more crazy people seem to think I am. So it takes some time for people to come around to uncomfortable truths, I guess you could say.
Yeah. I think I've been on the Udi train with you for a while. Seems to be a provocateur. Maybe
yeah, he was a troll and he was fun when he was making fun memes, but I don't know. Let's stop talking about Udi.
Yeah. Let's talk about RBF.
All right.
How big of a problem is this in your mind? I don't think, it makes sense to me. So let's
start with that. I had a way of framing that, and I made a tweet about this because this has been on my mind a lot lately, obviously. Sorry, how did you word it just now?
It makes sense to me, RBF.
So don't confuse ability with utility. Just because you can rationalize something does not necessarily make it an improvement or a utility that is something that must be done and should be done. It is very difficult to have the entire picture when it comes to something that involves the whole human ecosystem, complex systems, multiple systems interacting, the dynamics of the Bitcoin system and the economy and humans. And it's very egotistical to think that you could possibly grasp all of it into a comprehensive mental model, right? But it's something that we're all basically inherently trying to do anyway. And so I find a lot of the arguments around RBF kind of make this misconception. They say, because it makes sense to me, it must be. And that's it. It just must be. Because I can rationalize this and I see a path that, that I can solve this equation, then this must be the reality that we have to force in place and strive toward. But that isn't the whole picture. It never is, and it never can be. And none of us can predict the future, and none of us can fully explain the present. And because of that, I think that things like being much more conservative about changing Bitcoin, being much more humble about when you do change Bitcoin, or when you do have theories about your designs for Bitcoin or your designs for anything really. These are important values to have, because you might be wrong, and you might not even be held responsible when you're wrong, and everybody might agree with you, and you might all be wrong, and everybody might not actually be everybody. It might just be your friends, or it might just be people that are trying to agree with you for political and social reasons. And there's all kinds of weird dynamics at play that being a kind of stoic, moral, benevolent person is extremely difficult, even if it's your number one goal. And so being humble and conservative is probably paramount in these situations, especially when now you're fucking around with people's life savings. They're relying on Bitcoin to be there for them in very important ways for very important people to them. And so starting with this abstract concept, what's going on with RBF is there is a gap between, go ahead.
For anybody out there who's new to Bitcoin listening, RBF, replaced by fee. It is a mechanism that allows you to, if you send a transaction, it's not going to confirm to the block. The way you can make that transaction potentially get confirmed faster is replacing that fee that you initially attached to it with a higher fee, which would entice miners to include it in the block.
So there's a bit more to it than that. Yeah, so I guess since we're describing RBF, let me describe it, add some nuances there, because you need the nuances to be able to kind of fully judge the situation. But so the way Bitcoin works is you have a mempool, and when you want to get a new transaction added to the blockchain, you kind of send this transaction to all the nodes, and they store it in this mempool. But the mempool is not enforced. It's not something that is regulated by the consensus protocol. But there's still an aspect of consensus to it, because the behavior of nodes and how they manage the mempool and how they relay this information to other nodes has its own policies, and you have to have a process there as well. Because if you don't, you have spam problems and denial of service attacks and things like this. And so because it's an open listening network, you have to have some rules for how you handle this pool of data. And until now, the way that that mempool has been handled has a rule called first seen. And first seen has, I'm not expert in this. And actually the mempool is like a whole area of expertise that specific Bitcoiners are really specialists in. And I've done my best to kind of learn about it. And I've learned a lot about it, even more about it in the past week or two. But there's this first seen policy, to where the way that nodes normally behave until now is when they see a transaction, they keep that transaction. And if you try to send another one afterward that uses the same UTXO, it discards it. And part of the reason I think is because this is a free option kind of thing. Like I can just keep sending new versions of the transaction and keep bothering all the nodes and keep getting them all to update until the next block. Or actually perpetually, I can just keep sending, remaking this UTXO. And so at some point, the nodes have to decide, okay, what the fuck UTXO am I trying to spend here, right? Is it the newest one? Is it the third one? Is it the middle one? Should I be waiting for the next one? And eventually there's like, one has to get in the block and the miner has to pick one. And so, but the nodes also have to choose which ones to share. And so first seen says, just keep the first one you see, because this is like having some integrity to the network. It's saying, okay, this is what the person wanted to spend. Let's just push it through and spend it. Now, there are people who want to be able to replace this transaction. Or they say, okay, well, I made a mistake. Or even more importantly, I didn't put a high enough fee in there. Now my transaction is just kind of stuck. The blocks are full and the fees are high, and I didn't put a high enough fee, and I'm going to have to wait until another policy kicks in place, which is when the expiration, when a node will just drop it. And then when they drop it, you can kind of send another one and they'll propagate the new one, right? But you don't necessarily want to wait till all that time. I believe it's 2 weeks or so. Maybe you want to keep trying, and you want to get into you want to get into a block, but you want to pay the lowest fee possible. And so what RBF does is it says, when you make the transaction, you can turn on this flag, you can add a little tick box to this transaction that tells all the nodes, hey, this transaction, instead of keeping the first one, if you ever see a new one, throw the old one away and use the new one. But only let me do this if the fee is higher. And so now there's an entry cost. So there's some friction, right? Like you can't spam the whole mempool because you have to keep increasing the fee to replace the transaction. So it's like incentive compatible, right, to do this behavior. So this is useful, right? Like I can make sure my transaction doesn't get stuck. I can like play the system to pay the lowest fee possible. Everything's great, right? And that's what we have today. It does work. If you flag your transaction as RBF and you send a higher fee and replace it, you can do so. But there's a little bit of trickiness here. So RBF doesn't only do that. It also lets you change the destination of the transaction. It basically lets you recreate the entire transaction. So if you're using this to kind of scam someone, for example, and they don't know about RBF, then you could create the transaction. Say, hey, Marty, yeah, here's that $50 I owe you. Look, there it is. It's on the blockchain, and you go to a block explorer and you see it. It says zero confs, but you're like, all right, whatever. Usually when I see zero confs, it's fine, right? Nobody has ever double spent me with using a zero conf, so it's fine. And if you don't know about RBF, then you'll think it's fine. But then as soon as I show it to you, I leave and I make a new replace it with a fee, replace by fee, and I send it back to myself instead of send it to you, and then you never get the money. Now, because there's a flag on it, this double spending attack is pretty hard to do, right? Because Marty is not dumb and he knows about RBF, and the block explorer is also pretty useful, and it says replace by fee. It shows the person that this is not a normal transaction. And so you don't really hear too much, but you do hear about people getting scammed with RBF because it is something that you can scam the ignorant with. But you probably will hear more, especially from Bitcoiners, about the utility of it, because now you can optimize how you spend fees. You can unstick your transactions, and you can opt into this thing. But let's get to the zero conf part. Sorry if this is too detailed, but it's an important thing to understand. With zero conf, what happens is when users want to spend Bitcoin on chain, they go to a merchant, and we use Bitrefill because this is exactly how Bitrefill does things. Well, I mean, not exactly, but Bitrefill is a zero conf accepting merchant. And the user says, oh, I want to buy a gift card. And they go and buy a gift card, but they put a low fee on it, or they have RBF on. And then Bitrefill says to them, oh, waiting for confirmation. And they're like, oh, what the fuck is a confirmation? And they go and learn about confirmations. And then they learn that on average, they're going to have to wait 10 minutes. And they think to themselves, okay, well, when I buy a gift card with my credit card, I get it right away. When I buy a gift card with my bank account or whatever, I get it right away. Like, why am I using Bitcoin for this when I don't even like spending my Bitcoin? Why don't I use my fiat instead? Or why don't I get a credit card from crypto whatever and put my Bitcoin balance there so I can use the credit system and get instant, satisfaction? And many, many things that people purchase, they're not satisfied with having to wait 10 to 40 minutes. And sometimes blocks are even less reliable. And so for a merchant trying to accept Bitcoin, and now keep in mind, Bitrefill has been a pioneer and reckless when it comes to supporting Lightning. So you can't say just use Lightning, because they do. But the problem is most people don't use Lightning yet, and that includes Bitcoiners. And so people want to pay with Bitcoin at Bitrefill, and sometimes they get a shitty user experience where the next block doesn't happen for an hour. Okay, that's fine. You should know that's how Bitcoin is. You should accept this. But the effects of this are Bitrefill has to have customer service people that understand this. Bitrefill has to field a ticket from the user, and users are never nice to customer service when they're not getting what they want. And they're saying, where's my fucking order? Please give me a refund, blah, blah, blah. And then the price of Bitcoin changes. And so now you have this weird situation where you are in custody of your customers' funds. You have customer service trying to deal with them and keep them happy. You have to make a decision about whether you're trying to fulfill the order still or refund the person. And if now the person might complain because their Bitcoin is worth something different than when you send it back to them. And you've created all these second order effects because of the delay. And also in the delay, there's, you get exposure to the FX yourself. So suppose you do give them the card, but now the Bitcoin is worth 5% less. Now you're losing 5% of your margin because of this. And so time is a cost. And it's not just a cost in FX. It's not just a cost in the abstract. It's an actual measurable cost because you have to have more customer service capacity to deal with these situations. So what does Bitrefill say? They say, okay, well, if we accept zeroconf and we limit our exposure to zeroconf, basically what we do is we say, okay, if you want your order instantly, make sure your transaction fee is at least this high, the rate that you pay, because they do a fee estimation. They look at the mempool and they look at the latest blocks and they say, hey, if you pay 5 stats per virtual or whatever it's called, we'll accept your transaction immediately without waiting for it to be in a block. And if you turn off RBF, well, wait a minute, why? Why do I have to turn off RBF? I could double, a core dev will say, they can always double spend you. This is a factor whether you use RBF or not. While this is technically true, the first seen mempool policy actually makes it much more unreliable and much more difficult to pull off. And so basically it almost never happens. I believe, you could ask Sergey, but I believe they have been double spent for a small amount one time in all of the years that they've accepted zeroconf, because they have a policy of how they accept and when they accept zeroconf. And until very recently, I probably will have to stop because this is going to change. We had all these cool plans for updating BIP 21 to be able to leave it so the wallet could have RBF on all the time, but only turn it off when they were paying a merchant that supported, these best practices and these policies. So basically, the user would get the best of both worlds. When they weren't trying to pay a merchant that cared, they'd have RBF and they could manage their fees and undo their transactions. When they were using a merchant that cared, the wallet would automatically change the settings just for that one transaction. And we were going to make tools for merchants to be able to like automate and choose their exposure to this risk. And so, another aspect of what Bitrefill does is they say, okay, per block, because the risk only lasts one block, right? Because eventually things confirm or they don't, and you can cancel the order or accept it. Per one block deep, what is our maximum amount of zero conf exposure we want to have out there? And so they'll keep taking orders within a 10-minute time period, and they'll say, okay, we've reached, I don't know what their limit is. We'll say $50,000. We have $50,000 floating in the mempool right now of exposure, and if they're all double spends, we'll lose $50,000. Cap it. Stop accepting zero conf until the next block. And then they reset it when the next block comes in. They look at the situation and they reset it. But that cap has never even come close to being approached. Nobody has planned some wide attack to try to reach the full saturation of that attack and then repeat it. And then, if that did happen, Bitrefill would just have to stop, right? If every block they were being attacked for the full amount, the amount would go down and down and down and down to zero until Bitrefill would say, fuck this. But because they do this, they accept this exposure and they manage their exposure to this risk, they actually save money because now there's less customer service tickets, there's less exposure to the time risk, it's in the abstract, the FX, et cetera, and customers are happier. So it helps the Bitcoiner, it helps the Bitcoin merchant, and it helps Bitcoin compete with other payment forms that are instant, including some shitcoins, right? Because you can say, oh, just use Litecoin or something, right? And what you don't want is people like converting their Bitcoin to Litecoin so they can buy things with it. Because now you have conversion costs, you have utility for Litecoin, and this is like Bitcoin it's like moving away from being money, right? And we need people spending Bitcoin and people and merchants accepting Bitcoin and people getting paid in Bitcoin for Bitcoin hyper-Bitcoinization to like kind of actually realize itself. And I would say this is objective, but I guess I'll just say it's my opinion that these things are important. And so hopefully you can see so far, the relevance of zero conf acceptance, that Bitrefill nor am I saying zero conf is safe, but we're saying the risk exposure is actually manageable mathematically and programmatically and automatically. And we can give the user both utilities. We can say, not only do you have RBF, but you also have zero conf when you need it. But this requires and leans on the first seen mempool policy. And so recently, as part of a staged effort, which several developers will admit to, there is no Bitcoin Core, the organization, so I can't say Bitcoin Core planned this so much as there is a culture of developers that all want to see RBF, all transactions be treated RBF by default. And what that means is when I send a transaction to the mempool to get added to the next block, whether I flag RBF or not, that mempool is going to essentially turn on that flag for me. They're going to opt me in to this behavior, and they're going to not do the first seen policy. They're going to treat every transaction as the RBF policy. Every transaction is replaceable. So they're taking what is essentially a money network and saying at the mempool level, the behavior is nothing is reliable and everything can be undone. There is no assurance in any way. Now, of course, core devs will tell you that was always true. There was never any assurance. A miner could always choose any transaction they wanted to. A double spend, if the miner was the double spender mining their own transaction, they could skip all the mempool entirely. And so the double spend risk is always there. But my theory is that zero confirmation and RBF are actually both incentive compatible. And that's actually why Bitrefill is very rarely double spent when they're applying their methodology. And so the concern here is now the stage that we're at with the stage process that is known and eventually will just, totally and intentionally and unequivocally, whatever the word is, it will definitely make zero conf impossible in any fashion. Where we're kind of in this middle stage where what they're doing is they're adding a feature to nodes where they can turn on this policy. And so it's a very insidious thing because they're not actually turning it on. They're just saying, hey, everybody, we gave you this new button. And if you use this new button, then you will kill ZeroConf. And you will make all the transactions that whether they decided to flag RBF or not, they will all be RBF now. And if only, say, 10 or 15% of nodes turn on this button, then it works because of the nature of how the mempool propagates. You don't need a majority at all. You just need 10, 15%, or maybe one or two major miners to flip this switch. And then ZeroConf is effectively dead because now every transaction becomes programmatically and mempool enforced replaceable. And so that's what the debate has been about. It's been basically, please stop with this like passive aggressive plan of killing ZeroConf. And the debate, the nature of the debates has been very gaslighty for people like me and people like Sergey at Bitrefill, because they're leaning on where we started, where they see a rational path. They say, okay, like all these transactions were risky all the time. They were never safe. And so you shouldn't be doing that. And it's like, okay, but we never said they were safe. What we're telling you is we found a way to limit our exposure, to provide utility to Bitcoiners. And one more thing before I ask you if you have any questions, this is actually also pretty important for Lightning. So in Bitkit, we literally accept zero confirmation payments for channels in Lightning. And so right now, we haven't added ZeroConf channels yet, but when you combine ZeroConf channels with ZeroConf payments to buy those channels, you can create an instant experience for somebody where whether they're on Lightning yet or not, and like when we're going to add just-in-time channels, JIT channels, and we're going to add ZeroConf channels, and we already have ZeroConf payment acceptance for channels. Once you combine these three things, for somebody that opens a wallet, they don't know what Lightning is at all. Even if they do know Lightning is, it doesn't matter. If they're just not connected, they can go from zero, not connected at all, to receiving or spending Bitcoin instantly. They can say, okay, I want to be able to pay instantly. Okay, you do. Here's what we try. Pay this fee for opening the channel and configuring your channel and relying on our LSP. And as soon as you send that payment, the channel, we accept the payment, the channel is opened, and you're either receiving or spending immediately. And that's instant, right? Like this is a huge way to present Lightning to people, to say, hey, look, not only does your payment get accepted instantly, but the channel gets usable instantly, and you can spend or receive from it instantly. And you could even receive instantly when you haven't even opened the channel yet with JIT channels, as long as you have all of this flow in place. And so the mempool policy changing interrupts that flow. It says, no matter what you want now with Lightning, if you're opening a channel, you're going to have to wait some confirmations. If you're paying for a channel, you're going to have to wait some confirmations. And so we've added, depending on how you measure and what you're doing, 10, 30 more minutes to the process of onboarding to Lightning, which is really shitty for somebody who has no exposure to Lightning yet, and really not that great for people who do. And that's my story. I think I got mostly everything.
I think you did too, because this has been raging on the mailing list.
You haven't even seen the GitHub. So there are PRs. There were multiple PRs.
Didn't you get kicked
that were
out?
Made. No, not yet. There are multiple. I've been behaving myself. I've been trying to actually be, reasonable and present arguments and share, these perspectives I shared with you today. But people are mad, man. They do not want to hear it. They do not want to, entertain this soft type of rationalization that it's not about that we're saying they're safe. It's that we're saying that the risk exposure is manageable. They don't want to even consider the trade-off of what is better, the utility of, no matter whether they turn it on or not, them having the ability to undo or update their fee, or the utility of being able to pay instantly. And they won't even weigh that. And the thing is, if they do nothing, they don't have to weigh it. You get both still. That's the triggery part, is if you just leave it alone, everybody still gets what they want. But because you change it, you now say, oh, well, people who didn't opt into RBF can use RBF now, and that's cool. That's a feature. We should give that to everybody. But the cost of giving people a feature they didn't opt into is losing zeroconf as a feature. And so that's the trade-off, but they will not entertain this. And so there was actually a pull request for somebody. The tricky part here is we didn't catch wind of this until the tail end of the development of this feature, and it is already in the release candidate. And so for Bitcoin Core 24, this is in the code, and they're just like kind of doing cleanup and getting ready to launch. And then we're like, hey, wait a minute, what's going on here? And so some developers were kind enough to kind of speak up in the mailing list and be rational and kind of trying to argue our side as well, and even made pull requests to remove this aspect of the feature from the release candidate. But now, because it was in the release candidate, they are painting us as we're the ones trying to change Bitcoin because we're trying to remove a feature that hasn't been launched yet. And so they're trying to say, oh, you're the Roger Ver, John, you're the one trying to change Bitcoin. It's like, no, I'm just saying that like the Bitcoin I have right now on the live network is the one I want to keep. Please don't meddle with it. Please don't change it. This is very useful to me. And I have plans to like really leverage that usefulness for Bitcoiners, for Lightning user experiences, et cetera. And that the debates in there are even more interesting than the ones in the mailing list if you want to go back and do research. But there was lots of back and forth there with the proponents of the full RBF and me and some other people against it. And that got really, really strange. Some of the nature of the arguments just didn't feel very genuine. They would conveniently say like act like it's a voting system. Oh, we have 30 devs like disagreeing with you, John. It's like, okay, but there's no users here. Like, is this a vote now, or is this like an intellectual debate? And they're like, so when they just keep, it's like a circular arguing. Every time you counter their method, they choose a new method, and you just get nowhere. And it's actually been very disappointing and very defeating for me to go through this process because I've tried interfacing with Core several times, and it's never gone well. It's always been like something like, hey, we're going to kick you out, or hey, like, we're going to kick your friend out, or, hey, you're crazy and, you're doing bad things, and this is good, and you're trying to stop good, and you're trying to change Bitcoin. And it's just like, I've never actually, as a non-core dev, as a non-engineer, I can't seem to find a way to interface with that group. And whatever, man, like, I'm the guy that was like, that became known at all because of taking down Roger Ver. And for people to try to treat me like I am him just because I'm trying to protect a current Bitcoin use case, it's pretty gaslighting, man. Like, I don't know what to do about it. And apparently today, right as we started this episode, they posted that they are going to keep the chain because the pull request ended up getting closed by the guy who made it. And so that was like a huge defeat because even though he made it, the author of the feature, Antoine Rayard, he agreed with the pull request to remove it. So even the author said, this is too controversial. I see how there's two sides to this. Let's remove it from the release candidate for now. Even the author did it. But because the guy who made the PR closed the PR, and then the author didn't recreate a new PR, there was actually no candidate for this. And so it just became a default mode of it's in. And so now that it's in, Core took the advantage to say, let's ship this fucker and get it out there. And now they're shipping it. And so they announced today, there's like a big, like, I was reading it when I was waiting for you. There's like this big, like, long message in the notes for the release warning merchants, like, this change has happened. If you're using zeroconf, please be aware, this is zeroconf is not safe. It never was safe. You're going to have to stop now, all this shit.
Yeah. Doesn't seem too great. Because what really stood out to me was, you've mentioned Bit Refill at Synonym. You guys have intentions of incorporating it as well. And I wasn't aware of, like, I've just been following the discussion on the mailing list at arm's length. It's been going on for so long. I'm just like, holy shit, like, I can't believe this is still going on. I wasn't aware of like the risk trade-offs and the calculation there, that there is like actual risk management on the zeroconf acceptance in Bit Refill's case, what really stood out to me, we talked about it at BitDevs here in Austin last month, was the Moon team's email to the mailing list. We're like, hey, this is going to affect 100,000 users, which is...
Well, that's the triggery part is like people say, just use Lightning. Everybody that's fighting to not have this mempool full RBF thing uses Lightning. And we were some of the first people and some of the favorite people using Lightning. And we're trying our best to use Lightning and to get as many people to use Lightning as possible. But Lightning is for commerce. It is commercial technology. And so don't tell us just use Lightning. We're trying. But just because you accept Lightning doesn't mean you can tell your customers, but we don't accept Bitcoin. Like, you have to use Lightning. It doesn't fly. It doesn't work. And if you force people to use, when they use Bitcoin, to always wait and go through shitty experiences, if you force them when they're trying to onboard to Lightning to have to go through a long wait period and confusing, or God forbid, customer service, they're going to use something else. And that's the problem here is, do you want them using something else? Do you care? I think these engineers will say, no, that's not what Bitcoin's for. We don't care. Use Lightning. And the argument goes circular again. And the funny thing is I even got accused, Peter Todd was accusing me of, I don't know what he's talking about. He's like, John has a product that he wants to launch that uses this. And I think that if we delay this decision till the next release, because some people were saying, let's just keep talking about this, take it out of this release, keep talking about it and deal with it in the next release, which that would have been nice, to actually have not this deadline of pressure out of nowhere. And he said, if we do that, John's going to rush his product to market and argue that because he has users using this, that we shouldn't do it. And it's like, okay, like, first of all, I have no idea what you're talking about. We already released our wallet. It already uses ZeroConf, and I have no secret product that I'm going to rush to market. Even if I did, so what? Like, oh my God, people use this. Horrible. Like, the arguments were so crazy to me. So I can't think of it. Just gaslight so much. And Moon, Dario, Sergey. Dario also mentioned like many ATMs rely on this for a good user experience. Imagine having to stand there and there's not a block, right? And you're having to wait 40 minutes in the ATM to get your Bitcoin. Like, people will just use something else, man. They'll use a shitcoin that moves instantly. They'll use cash. They'll use fiat. They'll use forms of credit. And the funny thing is, we have Pear Credit, which we haven't really talked about yet. That's actually our, technology that we're making with Hole Punch and Tether and Bitfinex and Apollo. We stand to benefit a lot more if people use credit and use our system instead of Bitcoin at the payment when they're checking out. And I'm fighting for Bitcoin here. I'm not fighting for credit. Trying to be John the Bitcoin maximalist and again, get Bitcoin in the hands of everyone using it for everything. And somehow they're just keep twisting the conversation and twisting the arguments. And it just makes me not want to interface with them at all ever again. So I'm not going to update Bitcoin Core anymore. I'm going to make an effort to not update it at Synonym anymore. But this is also a little impossible because there are some not ideal practices in Lightning, where usually when Core updates, Lightning ends up updating and using the most recent version of Core as a dependency. So Lightning implementers, Lightning merchants, etc., we're kind of forced into a constant update policy. Like, we don't really have a choice to like choose the stablest, oldest, version. We have to keep updating. And this is dangerous because an update, doesn't have a lot of history to it, and so a vulnerability might not emerge for 6 months. And so I like having a policy of always using stuff that's 6 months old. Can't really do that so much with Lightning. And so, at least personally, I'm not updating my core node anymore. And I've learned there's even trade-offs with that. Luke Dasher's teaching me that you can't actually fully validate some soft fork stuff, and that soft forks get pretty hard over time. Anyway, I'm rambling, sorry.
No, I mean, haven't we learned this lesson the last 2 months too?
Which lesson?
Like updating.
Oh yeah, with like
quickly,
the LND bugs.
Yeah.
yeah. That's the thing. Is like, you're gonna force me to update. What if Core starts being a little too reckless and they start having Maybe not money losing bugs, but downtime bugs. This affects businesses. You can't just be down. Again, people will just use something else, and they'll use something that they can rely on. And unfortunately, centralized things tend to be reliable. And a lot of things that people use money for, they're not really as worried about censorship as other things. And so the nuance of these debates, if you don't respect the nuance at the design level, nobody's going to respect the nuance at the user level. And so I don't know how relevant it is, but this is just reminding me of a really nice sentiment that Sergey said to me, which is nuance is antiviral. And I don't know if this is his idea or if he read it somewhere, but I think it's extremely apt. You have to think about what travels is like memery, right? Like a meme is like a distilled, simplified, and abstracted idea. And so that means the opposite would be nuance. And so nuance is antiviral, and it's very difficult to convey. It's very difficult to propagate nuance. And so you kind of want to make sure you're respecting nuance at the design level, and because you're not going to get a chance to do it on the social level.
It's very true. I'm trying to think through, because I've heard from some core devs that they would argue Bitrefill, Moon, John, they're just kvetching. We've been warning them for years that this is coming and telling them to prepare. It's their fault for not having prepared.
That wording isn't exactly true. Maybe it would be fair to say we have known that ZeroConf has been unsafe forever. We all have known this. Before I worked at Bitrefill, I was with them. ZeroConf, no fucking way. At least one conf. I remember when it was 3 confs. I remember when it was 6 confs for everything. But as the network became harder to roll back, we've moved to pretty much everybody except for exchanges have moved to 1 conf. But the thing is, everything is able to be rolled back. Like if you want to be technical about it, 1 conf isn't safe either. 2 conf isn't safe either. 20 conf isn't perfectly safe either. And so I see it all as a spectrum starting from ZeroConf. And as long as you manage your risks appropriately to the depth of security, you're going to be fine. The worst case scenario is if they just left it alone, Bitcoiners may have this utility for decades to come. But the day that it actually breaks, like when the prediction becomes true, Bitrefill loses $50,000, I lose $20,000, and we stop doing it. And that's it. God forbid, 10 years, 20 years, 100 years of having this utility costing us, some thousands of dollars, and not having to hire extra customer service people, not having to have unhappy customers. God forbid that finally comes. Oh no. I think that this is I know it's a soft rationale and it's not something you can, rationalize absolutely perfectly, but you can keep it in a range. You can actually manage the risk. And when you do, it's a service, and this service will no longer be possible after 24. Most likely, it will no longer be possible. We've started thinking about ways to accept RBF ZeroConf, and we have a few ideas, but they're not cool. If people double spend you, we can do a mutual destruction game where we spend the entire amount, to the miner and CPFP it and weird things like this, but it just gets super messy.
Yeah. I'm trying to think in my mind now, why does it need to be mandatory at the mempool level?
So the argument, I'll give you one of the arguments. So Green Wallet does RBF by default. This is why I don't use Green Wallet because my mobile wallet, I use to buy stuff. One of the things I use to buy is gift cards at Bitrefill, and I forget sometimes, or if I use Core and I accidentally have RBF ticked on, when you do that, Bitrefill says, hey, you got to wait. I'm like, fuck, I don't want to wait. I have my shopping cart open. I want to use my gift card. I'm ready. And I get annoyed. And so I don't use Green Wallet because of the RBF on by default. And I don't know what this current state is, but the last time I checked, there's not even a way to turn it off. They literally already do RBF by default for all their users. But their argument is so niche and so asinine, in my opinion. It's this. When the mempool is congested and when blocks are full, we get tens of people come to us and say, oh, my transaction is stuck. What can I do? And we say, if they have we tell them if they have their own output, they can do CPFP, but otherwise you have to wait for the mempool to drop it and not pin the transaction anymore, and then you can try sending it again. And what they want to be able to say is, oh, if you use our wallet, which understands RBF, you can just do RBF. And that's all they want, is they just want to say, even though you didn't turn on RBF, you're in a shitty situation, now you can go ahead and use it because the mempool enforces this policy. But the thing is, like, this can all be handled at the user experience level. Like, a wallet could simply say, wallets already do fee estimation, right? They could look at the fees, they could look at the mempool, they could look at the block space, and they could just say, hey, there's congestion right now, RBF is turned on. Or they could just turn it on and not tell the user. You know what I mean? Like, all of these things are entirely manageable. They can be dynamic, they can be intelligent, and it's actually really cool that you can do this. But instead of being creative, instead of being user experience specialists, they're just saying, let's just make everybody do what we think they should do. And I just don't think the edge case of, if we have a handful of users at some point that want to RBF, even though they didn't opt into it, then we can tell them it's going to be okay. Well, it's going to be okay regardless. It's going to be okay faster. Then that's worth deleting ZeroConf. I don't think that's a good trade-off.
I don't know if I do either. Like, they
didn't opt into it. They didn't opt into it, and every single wallet has the capability to give them the way to opt into it, and force them to opt into it, and give them the way to turn it on or off. Every wallet can do that.
Yeah, I feel like this should be.
It's a wallet problem.
I feel like there should be like a BDK PR where it's like, hey, right as you're broadcasting a transaction, you should have a pop up that says, "Do you want to RBF this?" And you click yes.
Or
no.
Just only pop it up if it's appropriate and say, okay. Like, in other words, RBF could just be a tick box. If you want to have like an advanced wallet or whatever, it can just be a tick box, RBF on or off. People who know what it is can know what it is. You can put a little exclamation point on it so they can tap and learn what it is. And if they turn it off, you can tell them when they should turn it on, or you can just turn it on for them. If they turn it on, you could tell them when they should turn it off. And we can create specs and tools for this, for merchants, for wallets, to completely dynamically handle this without bothering the user at all. They'll all, the same thing that I'm trying to do with Lightning. We could make it so RBF is always there for them, whether they know that RBF even exists. And you can do it all at the wallet level.
Yeah. Me getting a steel man this too. I've had situations like literally in the last 2 weeks where I sent a transaction and I didn't have RBF enabled. I was like, what the fuck? Like, I actually need this to get through. And it took longer than expected.
But so here's another tricky part here. The merchant wants the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so remember, the merchant wants assurance that this will be in the next block. And so when the merchant is doing ZeroConf, they're always making you pay the right fee. It's a really tricky nuance that when you realize that, like, the only time we care about ZeroConf is when you're paying a high enough fee to be included in the next block. So you're not worried about RBF.
No, but for my situation, the merchant didn't really give a fuck about.
No, but so what I'm saying is, you could leave your wallet and you could leave RBF on all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
If your merchant doesn't give a fuck, that's fine. If you don't give a fuck, that's fine. You'll always have the ability to deal with your fee. And furthermore, you could do tricks for putting CPFP all the time, probably also. Like, you could just send an output to yourself every time, regardless whether you needed one, probably, and use CPFP. And by the way, Bitkit supports both CPFP and RBF. RBF is off by default as of the next version. But CPFP can handle many situations for incoming and outgoing transactions, depending on the situation. So you still have that as an option. And many times when people do want RBF, they do have an output to themselves. Because remember, when you're spending, you're rarely spending the exact whole amount of your UTXO. And so there's always, or very often, especially when you're paying a merchant, there's another output to yourself that you could CPFP with. And so that's another nuance here. And the only time typically that you're spending an entire UTXO is when you're depositing to an exchange or self-sending. And in those situations, the timeliness is usually not important. Exchanges are making you wait 3 comps anyway. Self-sending, you're probably just doing some sort of UTXO management or mixing or something. And so there's there's when you actually look at the use cases, the arguments for full RBF become like extremely narrow. And if you talk about actually intentionally managing this at the app level, you end up basically eliminating all of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I hope Odell listens to this interview, because he seemed very skeptical of me and critical of.
What did he say on
I know
RHI?
it was only a moment, but I did happen to catch that episode with you guys, and I was like, "Oh, come on, man! Like, give me a chance." Like, I think by now you guys know that I'm not crazy, and I'll always have Bitcoin, the best for Bitcoin, in mind. I wouldn't be doing this just to be an asshole.
I certainly know that. Matt, if you are listening, this could be a good Citadel Dispatch episode. Maybe that's something like you should get you and one of the core devs that's advocating for RBF by default to have this discussion.
I mean, there might be some things I wasn't as nuanced as I should have been about RBF. Like, I have my own biases, but I do have the user interests at the top here. This isn't about my business or about my products. Like, I would be making this argument if I worked at Bitrefill, if Synonym was dead. I like ZeroConf. I like using it as a user. Like, I like having that option, and I want to keep it.
Yeah. No, and you can use the heuristic developers, particularly back-end engineers, more particularly protocol developers, more particularly distributed system protocol developers, aren't always design focused and user experience focused.
Well, I was talking to, actually it was a private conversation, so I won't say who, but I was talking to another developer I respect. And what he said to me was that he didn't think that this was a cross I should die on, but that this argument maybe would supersede the whole thing. He doesn't think that core should be involved in policy, and he doesn't think that Bitcoin Core should be involved in mempool policy, that it should just be user defined, and they could just avoid these conversations entirely by not making these features, by not behaving this way, not getting involved in policy. And on this, we definitely both agree. I just don't think that we should be designing user behavior. I have a saying from before Bitcoin, from just doing regular old design for websites. There's no such thing as bad usage. There's only bad design. And so as long as you give people the tools that they need, you don't get to decide how they use them, and you don't get to decide whether how they're using them is good or bad. You just have to make sure that the tools you give them, solve problems for them. And you don't want to, place a bunch of foot guns in there for them to use. But you do need to do your best to do no harm and stay out of the user space, in my opinion.
Agreed. And they're just going to brute force this through. There's no is there any last ditch effort to get it out, you think?
I'm not actually familiar entirely with the release process, but it's been marked for release, so I'm pretty sure it's done. But I guess the shred of hope is that the current incentive structure is actually so strong that that maybe only 2 or 3% of nodes even turn this feature on. So that's still a possibility. But the problem is it just makes the inevitability, much closer. I agree with the engineers that this is inevitable in some form of rationalization. Someday some miner is going to see that there's enough people accepting ZeroConf where he decides to behave badly, start attacking. But this attack would be at the risk of themselves. And this is the other thing. There are real world consequences to stealing from people, and stealing from people at scale is not always very easy. Oftentimes, even if you're anonymous, you get caught. It's hard to be a large miner and be anonymous and then steal from people and then not get caught. And I don't even mean from regulations or the law. I just mean when you wrong people, there are physical consequences. And if they weren't police and law, they would be mercenaries, and they would be hitmen, and there's always going to be consequences to fucking people over. Like it's just always going to be a thing. And so the incentives are meat space as well. They're not just protocol incentives. It's that mostly people want to be, they like Bitrefill existing. They like, John making Lightning easy to use, and they like, Bitcoin. And so while this sounds, like naive, if only 1 or 2% of people are actually evil, then they actually don't have enough power to exploit this. And so it ends up working out on average. And even if they do, or when they do, the attack and the vulnerability is very short-lived, because either they start exploiting things and everybody stops the behavior, or they get caught. And so the incentives are much softer and not as easy to interpret as I think engineers realize.
Where they see it as very rigid, like this is going to happen.
Yeah, this is unsafe. It's like, okay, like I know, it's
let
fine.
people take risk.
Like, yeah, like Bitcoin's not safe. Like investing all your money in Bitcoin is not safe. Like there's no price enforcement in Bitcoin. You don't know for sure whether it's going to be worth something when you go to spend it. There's no guarantee there. There's no guarantee that the person you really need to spend it with will accept it. There's no enforcement of Bitcoin value. It's not actually a battery. And so, like that's risky too. And is that in the code? Does it say like, be careful, don't own too much Bitcoin? No, it doesn't. You know what I mean? Does it stop you from having too many Bitcoins in your wallet? Like, it's crazy. I don't know.
Yeah. We could talk about this all day. It's been a fascinating 2 hours.
Has it been 2 hours? I guess, I talked a lot. Fuck, sorry.
There's lots to talk about. A lot going on.
We didn't talk about Pear Credit. Do you want to try that for a little bit and then end it, or you want to just end it?
Let me see. I've got to get going here, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, then I'll plug it and say we actually just did a 2-hour Spaces on Pear Credit with me, Matthias, and Paulo, and that was recorded. And so you can go to the Pear Cred handle on Twitter and listen to that space if you want to learn more about it. But
what's the 1 minute Pear Credit pitch?
We figured out how to do credit, or essentially tokens, digital bearer instruments without a blockchain, and without Lightning, which means that you can do direct peer-to-peer, stuff like stable coins and gift tokens as a concept, without needing routing, without needing liquidity channels, without needing Lightning, instantly, no fees, no blockchain, no bullshit, and we'll be releasing code and specs for that in Q1, Q2, implementing it in our products in Q2, Q3, and by the end of the year, you'll see, instant, free moving, stable Tether coins and not needing shit coins.
Is this? I'm assuming it's
sorry,
not.
1 minute's up, Marty. No
I'm
questions.
sorry. I'm assuming it's not like the Omni layer stuff, because that requires a blockchain.
No blockchain. No. So it's like we use Lightning style channels. And so we've used the concept of channels that Lightning has, except like state and peer-to-peer state, except it's settling to a ledger. And the ledgers are these hypercores. And so you have Tether, and they issue Tether in this, database, but it's a publicly distributed database, right? It's using Hypercore, it's in the DHT. If you have an account in Tether, you can lock your balance and you can make a new ledger. And this is now your Tether ledger, and people can have an account in this ledger. And if you have this whole like tree of ledgers everywhere, you can bridge them with using Lightning style channels. And so you can just basically say, hey, I want to pay Marty, but Marty's over in the Binance ledger with his Tether, and I'm in the FTX ledger. Oh, fuck me. And I want to pay Marty, and I say, I open a channel with you, and we have a state together. But it's like a disposable channel. I can keep it open, and we can go back and forth, or I can just send you one payment and close it. There's no like settlement on chain or kind of thing. And it uses the same punishment transaction kind of concept to where if you try to misrepresent the state of our channel, I can punish you and report it to the ledger and say, hey, I have a proof that Marty is cheating. And then you get your punishment and I get your money. And so it's just a way of saying, hey, credit, stable coins, IOUs, any type of IOU, whether you want them to be coffee tokens, a month of Netflix tokens, steel inside of, or gold inside of World of Warcraft, whatever, it doesn't matter. You can have them issued they're all centrally issued anyway. And so if it's centrally issued, the only quality that you're getting by putting these tokens on a blockchain is simply this bearer right, this digital bearer right to when I give it to you, it's not mine anymore. If that's all we needed to recreate, and we figured out, we're pretty sure we need to audit it and everything to make sure it's safe, but we're pretty sure we figured out a way to do this without a blockchain at all, because again, these Hypercore, these ledgers have integrity to them. They can only be written to by keys. They have a sequence to them that you can tell that, the append log only. So it's kind of like a blockchain, like I mentioned earlier. So you can get all the qualities you need out of a bearer instrument without the blockchain aspect.
Is it akin to like Signet, the ledger on Hypercore, where you have to sign to create a new block? Or
I'm not familiar with Signet, honestly. Like we use RegTest and testnet and stuff, and I've only just started learning about those through developing the wallet. I never actually used them hands-on. I think Signet is where you run your own blockchain, right? So that there might be some similarities.
And you produce blocks with signatures,
yeah. Yeah. I don't know a lot about it to say, but I'll say that, yeah, it's like, it has a blockchain-like structure, so you can have this sequential integrity, and you can have this cryptographic integrity because it's all written to by a key. And so you can recreate the use case, the isolated use case of trusted, credit, of trusted amounts where they're just IOUs. And so we're not trying to make shitcoins. We're not saying this is money. We're saying that businesses, entities that want to be trusted can define these credits and have issue on their reputation and say, hey, this is redeemable for one large coffee. And if you have this credit amount in your account, you can now take that and you can pass it to somebody else in any other Pear Credit ledger.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating. All right. Much longer than a minute. John, it's always a pleasure, sir. We should,
awesome to see you. I'll have to visit Austin again sometime. I don't know if that will be anytime soon, but maybe I'll see you at a conference.
Very anti-America these days, from what I hear.
Yes, I am. I'm not gonna lie. There are many Americans I like, but there is not a lot about America I like. So I'll put it that way.
We need you back here. We need to change it.
Yeah, well, there's a whole world to change, man.
That's true. That's true.
You take care of Austin. I'll take care of everything I touch. It just won't be the U.S.
All right, freaks. Go check out Bitkit. Check out Synonym, /tags, Hypercore, Hole Punch, Pear Credit.
Pear Credit.
Keat. Follow John on Twitter @Bitcoin Error Log. I feel like I've been following you for like 8-9 years now. One of the first follows on Twitter. When your avatar used to be like just the big exclamation point.
Oh yeah, that was the beginning. Awesome.
All right.
I had a different name back then too.
I forget what that was.
We'll leave it for the audience to figure out.
Go figure it out. Go on archive.com. Enjoy this rip. Peace and love, freaks. Bitkit.